The galaxy woke to a message that did not shout. It did not threaten. It did not declare war. It simply appeared on every major network at the same time. 3 words: return the child. There was no signature, no seal, no coordinates. Yet every leader, every admiral, every intelligence chief knew who had sent it. Humanity, across the core worlds. Screens flickered in silent rooms. Council members leaned forward. Trade ministers stopped mid-sentence. Military officers felt a strange chill they could not explain. Because everyone remembered the border inspection. The Youngling-Their Dominion had called it routine. The Youngling-Their Dominion never did anything routine. They were tall, silver-skinned, and proud. Their fleets were large. Their weapons were advanced. For decades, they had expanded system by system, claiming they brought order. Few dared to argue. When a small human colony transport crossed into a disputed zone, the Youngling-Their seized it. They said it was for inspection. They said it was for security. The human ship carried families, workers, children. The Youngling-Their soldiers moved through the ship with cold efficiency. They scanned cargo. They scanned crew. They recorded everything. Then they found the younglings. Small, fragile, loud. To the Youngling-Their scientists, human children looked unimpressive. Soft bodies, slow reflexes, no natural armor, no visible weapons. One Youngling-Their officer had laughed. Such a weak species invests so much in its young. A scientist requested one subject for cultural study. Purely academic, he said. Temporary. The human captain refused. The Youngling-Their commander overruled him. One child was taken. A boy no more than 6 cycles old. He did not fight. He did not scream. He simply stared at the armored figures with wide eyes. The Youngling-Their logged it as a minor incident. A footnote. The colony ship was released. Damaged pride. No serious harm. They believed that was the end. The human response came 12 hours later. Not a fleet. Not a protest. Not even a demand filled with anger. Just those 3 words. Return the child. In the Youngling-Their capital, High Chancellor Varric stood before a tall window that overlooked his city of shining towers. Advisors crowded behind him. Military commanders waited for orders. Varric read the message twice. Then he smiled. They send no ships, he said calmly. No threats. No mobilization. One general stepped forward. Chancellor, our sensors detect increased human data traffic. Emotional noise, Varric replied. They are a protective species. They value their offspring too much. It clouds their judgment. Another advisor spoke carefully. The message was transmitted on frequencies we cannot trace. It bypassed our firewalls. Varric waved a hand. A technical trick. Nothing more. He turned away from the window. They are weak because they love too deeply, he said. They will negotiate. They always do. Across human space, something very different was happening. Embassies closed. Ambassadors returned home without speeches. Trade ships altered course quietly. Military patrols disappeared from public routes. There were no grand announcements. No emotional broadcasts. Just quiet movement. On Earth, deep beneath the surface, command rooms lit up. Officers spoke in calm voices. Orders were short. Clear. Secure. Calculate. Prepare. The boy sat in a Youngling-Their research facility, alone in a clean white chamber. The walls were smooth. The air was cool. He had been offered food. He had been offered toys scanned from his ship's records. He did not touch them. He simply watched the cameras in the ceiling. One young Youngling-Their guard found himself uneasy when he stood outside the chamber. The human child did not cry, did not beg. He just waited. The guard checked the galactic feeds during his shift. More species were reacting to the message. The Trinar Collective increased border defenses. The Oran Republic called emergency council meetings. No one wanted to be near whatever would happen next, because humanity had gone quiet, and the galaxy had learned something over the years. Humans were loud when they argued. They were loud when they traded. They were loud when they celebrated. But when they went silent, planets changed. Back in the Velthri capital, reports continued to arrive. Human trade routes suspended. Human civilian traffic restricted. Human military broadcasts encrypted. One admiral requested permission to increase defensive readiness. Chancellor Varick refused. "We will not show fear over one taken specimen," he said sharply. "Return the child and we admit guilt. We show weakness." He folded his hands behind his back. "They will calm down. They are emotional. It will pass." Far away, in a human command center buried beneath mountains, an admiral looked at a single holographic image, a child's face. He gave no speech. He did not raise his voice. He simply said, "Confirm target maps." A quiet chorus replied, "Confirmed." "Begin stage 1. "Yes, sir." Across the galaxy, the message still echoed in memory. "Return the child." No countdown followed. No warning. Just the silence stretching across the stars. The Velthri believed silence meant surrender. They did not understand. Silence, to humanity, was the space between decision and action, and the line the Velthri had crossed. They had never even seen it. Weeks passed. The message did not repeat. Humanity did not send another word, but things began to change. First, the human ambassadors left the Galactic Council chambers. They did not argue. They did not protest. They simply stood, bowed once, and walked out. Their seats remained empty. Then trade routes to Earth slowed, then stopped. Freighters that once carried food, medicine, rare metals, and human technology turned around mid-journey. Shipping lanes that had been busy for decades became quiet lines of empty space. No official statement was made. No explanation was offered. Other species began to whisper. The Trinar Collective increased border patrols near human territory. The Oran Republic moved their civilian fleets farther from Velthri space. Even smaller neutral systems activated old defense satellites they had not used in years. Because everyone felt it, the silence was growing heavier. In the Velthri capital, High Chancellor Varick continued to dismiss concerns. "Humans are isolating themselves," he said during a council session. "It is a sign of internal disorder." But not everyone agreed. Dr. Selvek, a senior Velthri scientist, had been studying human communication patterns for years. He was not a politician. He trusted data more than pride, and the data frightened him. He stood in a dark laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays. Lines of code flowed like rivers in the air. "Something is wrong," he muttered. Human networks had always been noisy. Civilian chatter, commercial signals, entertainment streams, military updates. Billions of small transmissions filled the void between stars. Now, the noise was gone, not reduced. Gone. Selvek zoomed in on a cluster of human systems. Instead of regular signals, he saw narrow beams of encrypted light, short bursts of tightly packed information. They did not use standard frequencies anymore. "They changed their language," he whispered. He sent a report to the Dominion Security Council. The reply came quickly. "Continue observation. Do not escalate." But Selvek kept digging. Military satellites around Earth had shifted positions. Subtle changes at first. A few degrees here. A small orbit adjustment there. But when mapped together, they formed patterns. Defensive grids. Targeting arrays. Human colony worlds were going into full lockdown. Planetary shields tested. Civilian ships grounded. Communication restricted. It did not look like fear. It looked like coordination. Meanwhile, the human fleets had vanished. Velthri patrols scanned known human routes. Nothing. Deep space listening posts searched for engine signatures. Nothing. It was as if the human navy had dissolved into vacuum. In the research facility, the human child sat on the floor of his white chamber. He had been there for weeks. He did not cry. He did not shout. He barely moved. He watched. The cameras. The doors. The guards. His eyes followed every motion. The Velthri scientists tried gentle questions. They tried translated speech. They tried holographic images of Earth. The boy said nothing. One of the guards, a young Velthri named Kareth, began to feel uncomfortable during his shifts. He had seen captured prisoners before. Most species showed fear. Some showed anger. This child showed neither. Just quiet observation. Kareth checked the galactic news feeds during his breaks. Reports of human withdrawal continued. Council struggled to pass motions without human votes. Trade shortages began in border systems that relied on human goods. Still no warships. Still no threats. One evening, as Kareth stood outside the chamber, the boy looked directly at him, not with hatred, not with fear, just steady focus. Kareth felt a strange tightness in his chest. "Why aren't you crying?" he muttered softly, though he knew the child would not answer. Across Veltri space, more unusual reports arrived. Long-range probes detected faint gravitational ripples near uninhabited systems. Nothing large enough to confirm, just disturbances. Selvek received another batch of data. Human shipyards, once bright with energy signatures, were now dark, cold, but his instruments detected mass. Hidden mass. Ships were still there. They were simply not broadcasting. Selvek requested an emergency audience with Chancellor Varric. In the grand chamber, under bright lights and polished stone, Selvek presented his findings. "They are not retreating," he said carefully. "They are consolidating." Varric's expression hardened. Consolidating for what? Selvek hesitated. For coordinated action. A murmur spread through the chamber. Varric raised a hand to silence it. "We hold their child," he said calmly. "They will not risk open conflict." Selvek lowered his gaze. "With respect, Chancellor, humans do not appear to be negotiating." Silence followed. Varric dismissed the meeting. Outside the capital, Veltri citizens continued their lives. Markets remained open. Skies remained clear. News outlets repeated official statements that everything was under control. But military traffic within Dominion space quietly increased. Defensive fleets were repositioned. Sensor grids recalibrated. They told themselves it was precaution, nothing more. On Earth, deep within a reinforced command center, a group of human officers stood before a massive star map. Red markers blinked over Veltri systems. Blue markers shifted in precise patterns. An admiral folded his hands behind his back. "Stage 1 is complete," an officer reported. "Civilian evacuation status? Secure. Fleet alignment? In position." The admiral nodded once. "Proceed to Stage 2. No anger filled the room. No shouting. Only calm voices and steady hands. Back in the research facility, Kareth watched the child again. The boy had not spoken in weeks. But as Kareth turned to leave at the end of his shift, he heard a soft sound. He froze. It was not a cry. It was not a plea. Just 3 quiet words, spoken in clear basic English. "They are coming." Kareth's blood ran cold, because he suddenly understood something the Chancellor did not. Humans were not pleading. They were not grieving. They were not bargaining. They were preparing. It began without a single warning shot. No alarms. No dramatic speeches. No fleet appearing in the sky. Across the outer rim of Veltri space, defense grids simply failed. One moment they were active, scanning the dark between stars. The next moment, every system blinked red. Offline, command stations called for diagnostics. Engineers rushed to consoles. Backup systems tried to activate. Nothing responded. Within seconds, similar reports flooded Central Command. Outer shield arrays, unresponsive. Long-range sensor webs, blind. Automated missile platforms, frozen in standby mode. There were no explosions, no visible damage. It was as if someone had quietly turned the lights off. In the Veltri capital, High Chancellor Varric was woken by an emergency alert. He rushed into the war chamber, robes thrown over his shoulders. "What is happening?" he demanded. An admiral stood pale before a holographic display. "Outer defense grids have failed simultaneously across 12 sectors. Sabotage? We do not know." Before Varric could respond, another officer spoke. "Our primary AI network is malfunctioning. Core processing hubs are rejecting commands." Screens flickered. Lines of code scrolled too fast to read. The Veltri relied heavily on their central AI. It managed traffic. It balanced energy grids. It coordinated defense systems. Now it was collapsing. Is it virus? Varric asked sharply. Unknown. The AI is isolating itself. Subroutines are shutting down. Across Veltri space, deep space shipyards went dark. Massive structures that built warships for decades suddenly powered down. Construction drones froze mid-task. Energy reactors shifted into safe mode without command authorization. There were still no human ships in sight. No battle. No lasers cutting through the void. Just silence and loss of control. Dr. Selvek stared at incoming data with horror. He recognized patterns in the shutdown. It was not random failure. It was targeted. Every system connected to military expansion was being disabled. Logistics, ship production, long-range weapon arrays. Even fuel depots were locking access codes. They mapped us, Selvek whispered. They studied everything. In the research facility, the power flickered briefly. Emergency lights activated along the walls. Guards exchanged nervous glances. Kareth felt his communicator vibrate. All Veltri personnel were ordered to remain at posts. No one was to leave. He looked into the white chamber. The human child sat exactly as before, calm, watching. In orbit around a distant Veltri mining world, a fleet commander waited for orders that did not come. His ships were armed and ready, but targeting data from Central Command was gone. Communication lines were unstable. Then, at the edge of his sensors, something appeared. Faint, cold, a cluster of shapes emerging from behind a gas giant. Human ships. They did not arrive in dramatic formations. They slid into view like shadows. No battle music. No loud broadcast. Just controlled movement. The Veltri commander tried to issue an attack order. His weapon systems did not respond. Human electronic warfare had already neutralized them. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations from neutral species detected the shift. Human fleets were appearing across multiple Veltri sectors at once. Not thousands of ships. Not overwhelming numbers. Just enough. Enough to hold positions over strategic worlds. Enough to enforce. Within hours, the galactic community intercepted a transmission. It was heavily encrypted, but fragments were decoded by multiple intelligence agencies. A classified human directive. Short, clear, protect the young, remove the threat. There were no emotional words, no revenge language, no anger, just purpose. In the Veltri war chamber, panic began to spread. Our outer colonies are being surrounded, an officer reported. Human fleets are disabling orbital platforms. They are not firing on cities. Are they demanding surrender? Varric asked. No, Chancellor. Then what are they doing? Selvek answered quietly from behind. They are removing our ability to wage war. Planet after planet reported the same pattern. Military command centers locked out their own systems. Defense fleets forced into passive mode. Shipyards seized and placed under remote human control. Human boarding teams entered strategic installations with precision. They disabled reactors. They secured data cores. They confiscated weapon stockpiles. There were casualties, but only where Veltri forces resisted. The humans did not target civilian areas. They did not bombard cities. They did not announce victory. They dismantled. Cold, precise, calculated. In the research facility, emergency orders came at last. The human child was to be moved to a secure transport, but before the guard could open the chamber, the facility lost all command authority. Doors unlocked. Security drones powered down. A human strike team entered through the roof, descending in silence. Kareth dropped his weapon without being told. He understood. This was not chaos. This was judgment. The human soldiers did not shout. They did not threaten. One of them knelt before the child. It's time to go home, he said softly. The boy stood without hesitation. As they escorted him out, Kareth met the eyes of the human team leader. There was no rage there, only certainty. Back in the Veltri capital, Chancellor Varric watched the star map shift from proud blue to neutral gray. Sector after sector lost military status. Our fleets, he asked weakly. Disarmed, the Admiral replied. We cannot coordinate counterattack. Varric felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear, not because cities were burning, but because they were not. Humanity was not destroying them in anger. They were solving a problem, systematically, permanently. Across the galaxy, one truth became clear. This was not war driven by rage. It was enforcement, a death sentence delivered not through fire, but through the removal of power. And everyone understood. The Velthri Dominion had touched the one thing humanity would never gamble, their future. And now, that threat was being erased. The Velthri Dominion had ruled through strength for generations. Now their strength meant nothing. High Chancellor Varric stood before a chamber filled with worried faces. Generals, ministers, industrial leaders, all waiting for a miracle. Instead, reports continued to arrive. Outer fleets disarmed. Weapon depots seized. Command relays overridden. Send a surrender signal. Varric ordered at last. His voice was tight, but steady. Open every diplomatic channel. Offer reparations. Offer trade concessions. Offer anything. Signals were transmitted across secure lines. No response came. Human embassies were closed. Human council seats were empty. Political channels no longer existed. On the edges of Velthri space, human fleets held position above key military worlds. They did not fire on cities. They did not attack civilians. Instead, they targeted command centers. One by one, on the war-industrial planet of Rethkar, massive factories that once built cruisers and destroyers powered down under remote override. Human strike teams entered through maintenance corridors. They seized central processors and locked the production lines. Velthri engineers were ordered to stand aside. Those who complied were left unharmed. On another world, orbital expansion fleets were surrounded. Human ships matched them formation for formation, weapons ready but silent. Velthri captains attempted to arm plasma batteries. Control systems denied access. Human cyber units had already infiltrated. Across the Dominion, military command structures collapsed like a building with its foundation removed. There were no dramatic invasions, no cities in flames, only steady dismantling. Dr. Selvek watched from a secure data center as one after another of the Dominion's strategic networks went offline. "They are not conquering," he said softly to the officer beside him. "They are cutting away our claws." The officer swallowed. "Can we rebuild?" Selvek looked at the star map. Human fleets were not occupying territory. They were isolating military nodes, confiscating weapons, disabling shipyards, rewriting command hierarchies. "No," Selvek whispered. "Not while they stand there." In the research facility, confusion turned to shock when a human child vanished from records. The extraction had been fast, precise. A human special operations team entered during the system blackout. They bypassed biometric locks, neutralized security without lethal force, retrieved the child. Kareth had stood frozen as the human soldier knelt. "It's time to go home," he had said gently. No anger, no threats, just certainty. Within minutes, they were gone. The facility remained intact, the staff alive, but the message was clear. The child was never theirs to hold. Back in the Velthri capital, Chancellor Varric demanded direct communication with human command. "I will speak to their leader," he said. "I will negotiate terms." After hours of silence, a single channel opened. A human admiral appeared on the central display. He wore a simple uniform. No medals, no decorations beyond rank insignia. His face was calm. Varric straightened. "We acknowledge the return of your youngling," the Chancellor began. "The Dominion is prepared to discuss reparations and—" The Admiral raised one hand slightly. "You targeted our future," he said. "Nothing more. No shouting. No insults." Varric felt the weight of those words settle over chamber. "It was a scientific error," he replied quickly. "A misunderstanding. We did not harm the child." "You took him," the Admiral said evenly. Silence filled the room. "We have ceased expansion," Varric continued. "We will sign non-aggression pacts. We will dismantle disputed outposts." The Admiral's expression did not change. "This is not negotiation," he said. The channel closed. Across Veltri space, the final phase began. Human forces transferred control of Seas War Industries to neutral oversight committees. Expansion fleets were escorted to secure docking zones and stripped of heavy weapons. Military academies lost access to strategic databases. Command chains were rewritten under international supervision. The Dominion's ability to coordinate large-scale military action vanished. Citizens noticed shortages in weapons manufacturing. Military broadcasts ceased. Recruitment offices shut their doors. But cities were not bombed. Homes were not destroyed. Markets remained open. Life continued, just without the empire that had once promised dominance. Within weeks, the Veltri Dominion ceased to function as an expansionist power. Its borders remained. Its people survived. But its fleets were grounded. Its shipyards monitored. Its command structures dismantled. In the Galactic Council chamber, other species watched with quiet fear. Humanity had not committed genocide. They had not erased a species. They had erased an empire, and they had done it with outrage. On Earth, the rescue boy stepped off a medical transport under a clear sky. Doctors examined him. His family embraced him. He had not been physically harmed. But the galaxy had learned something because of him. In the Veltri capital, Varric stood again at his window overlooking shining towers. They were still there. The city still lived. But beyond the atmosphere, human ships remained in silent orbit, not as conquerors, as guardians of a warning. The Dominion's war banners were lowered, expansion projects canceled, military budgets frozen. Their empire, built on strength and fear, no longer had teeth. And every leader across the stars understood the lesson. Humanity did not destroy recklessly. They removed threats. Completely, permanently. The Veltri had tried to test a boundary they did not understand. Now their civilization still existed, but their empire was gone, and it would never rise the same way again. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. For the first time in centuries, the Veltri delegation stood without guard behind them, without warships outside the station, without pride in their posture. They were alive. Their people were safe. But their empire was finished. Their fleets had been disarmed. Their shipyards monitored by neutral observers. Their expansion rights formally suspended. They were no longer feared. They were no longer dominant. They simply remained. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber. Some avoided looking at the Veltri. Others studied them carefully, as to try and understand how such a powerful civilization had been reduced without a single city burning. At the center platform stood the human ambassador. He had not spoken publicly since the message, "Return the child." Now, at last, humanity had returned to the council. The ambassador wore a simple dark uniform. No grand medals. No symbols of victory. His expression was calm. He did not look like a conqueror. He looked like a teacher. The council chair signaled for silence, though none was needed. The Veltri Dominion acknowledges defeat, the chair announced. Their military command structures have been dissolved. Their expansion charters are revoked indefinitely. Their sovereignty remains intact under revised interstellar oversight. A soft murmur passed through the chamber. Then the chair turned to the human representative. Humanity has requested to address the council. The ambassador stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. "We do not conquer," he said. His words carried clearly through the chamber. "We do not exterminate." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "But we do not forgive harm to our young." The Veltri delegation lowered their eyes. The ambassador continued. "You believed our silence was weakness. You believed our restraint was fear. You believed our love for our children made us fragile." He looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each species in turn. "You were wrong." A projection appeared behind him. It showed no battle footage, no explosions, only maps. Strategic nodes disabled, shipyards decommissioned, fleet formations dissolved. "We remove a threat," he said simply. "Nothing more." The words were not filled with anger. They were filled with certainty. A document materialized on the central display. Title: Human Protection Clause. The ambassador read it aloud. "Any species that targets human children He let the weight of that phrase settle. We'll lose military sovereignty. The chamber remained silent. We'll lose expansion authority. No one moved. We'll lose galactic protection. That line changed everything. Because galactic protection meant shared defense treaties. It meant trade alliances. It meant recognition. Without it, a species stood alone. The chair of the council spoke carefully. Is this doctrine limited to the Veltari? The ambassador shook his head. It applies to all. A long pause followed. Then one by one, species representatives signaled agreement, not because they were forced, not because human fleets surrounded them, but because they understood. Humanity had not destroyed the Veltari species. They had spared them. That mercy was more frightening than annihilation. The document was signed. The Human Protection Clause became law. Across the galaxy, the message spread quickly. It was not dramatic. It was not loud, but it was clear. Back on Earth, a medical transport descended through blue sky. The rescued youngling stepped onto solid ground. His family waited beyond the security line. When he saw them, he finally ran. For the first time since his capture, he smiled. Doctors monitored him. Officials recorded the return. Media outlets kept a respectful distance. There were no grand parades, no victory speeches. The admiral who had directed the operation watched from afar, hands folded behind his back. One of his officers spoke quietly. We could have erased them. The admiral nodded. Yes. Why didn't we? He looked up at the sky. Because we are not monsters, he replied. We are guardians. Far beyond Earth, Veltari war banners were removed from orbiting stations. Their massive fleets remained docked under supervision. Military academies closed their strategic divisions. The Veltari people continued their lives, but they no longer ruled, and they never would again. In the council chamber, the empty human seats were once again filled. Trade slowly resumed. Diplomacy returned. But something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had seen humanity's true strength. Not rage, not chaos, not blind revenge. Precision, control, finality. Humanity did not scream when harmed. They did not threaten loudly. They did not lash out without thought. They studied. They prepared. And when the moment came, they removed the danger completely. Across the stars, leaders recorded the lesson carefully in their archives. There exists one boundary in this universe that must never be crossed. You may challenge human fleets. You may compete with human industry. You may debate human politics. But you do not touch their children, because humanity does not respond with wild destruction. They respond with controlled, extinction-level precision. And now everyone knows. There is one line in the universe you never cross.